The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, let's start from the very beginning. So you were born here in Melbourne?
I was born in Sydney. In 1973, long time ago. And yeah, grew up there, went to school there, early foundations of learning about life. And yeah, grew up in sort of the inner west, I guess you'd call it, around West Ryde, Ermington, Meadowbank, in that area. Stayed there till the end of year 7. So Form 1 up there, and then migrated down to Victoria, straight to Geelong, and then finished my schooling years there, started work there, and then eventually got the fuck out and moved to Melbourne. Had a family, moved back, so yeah.
And so at what age did you start getting into hip hop, I guess as a fan, as a listener?
As a fan, as a listener, I'd say early to mid 80s, so probably around about 84, 85. I was part of that. I wasn't one of the older guys, but I was there for that first generation that hit our shores, but I was a younger kid, so I remember being in grade 5 or grade 6, and I vividly remember when it just hit, you know what I mean? And I can't pinpoint what the songs were that we were listening to at the time, apart from the obvious, whether it was Rocket, whether it was Buffalo Girls, whether it was, The Message, shit like that. We got them a little bit later, obviously, but it really cemented and really hit home when Beat Street hit for me. And that was kind of, I think, maybe 80, I think Beat Street came out in 84, but I think we sort of got it by the end of 84, 85. So I remember sort of being in grade 6 when that really hit. And yeah, took on everything. I did break dance lessons. I did, I started practicing graph and really started to vibe on the culture itself, you know what I mean? In that very infant stage as it sort of hit Sydney, so.
And then so is painting, that came before the rap stuff?
It all hit at the same time for me. So I was kind of, I think we sort of heard the music and at the same time the graph shit hit. So they kind of just went hand in hand, oddly, before even really learning it kind of came as a culture, same as the dancing. So I guess, yeah, they all just hit at the same time for me. Obviously, as far as doing music, I didn't fuck with that for years later, but graph was the easiest thing to get a handle on, as far as you didn't need any money. And the same as breakdancing to a degree. But I wasn't really, it would be sort of a lie for me to say that I was any kind of dancer, that's for sure, and still not. But, it was all just a part of the package and we embraced it all, I guess. I mean, it's funny now when I think that there's, which it's obvious that there is, but there's writers that don't listen to hip hop. And there was writers back then. There was a bigger movement, obviously, in the States of guys that listen to rock or heavy shit or whatever. I think because it all hit us as the one package, so many of us in Australia just kind of adapted to either one and the rest came with it, or picked up a few of the, a few components of it, sort of thing. So.
Tell us a little bit about the graph game in, I guess that period of time. So say the late 80s to the mid 90s. Because I hear that, the Melbourne graph scene is different to the Adelaide one. And I can imagine, particularly if you go back years ago, shit was probably a little bit more gully than what it is now.
I think so. I mean, I first became attracted to it when it hit, as I said. And I grew up, when I was still in Sydney, I lived in West Ryde and Ermington, which again is that sort of inner western suburb area, and we actually had a distinct crew that went to my school and was known in the area, and they were called WRB, West Ryde Boys, and they had a massive impact on me, because I guess when you're young and the first stuff that you ever see, it always leaves a lasting memory, whether it's the graph, whether it's the music, whatever. And yeah, I went on, for years always thinking of that crew, who later on formed another crew called KOA. They kind of went international and a lot bigger. But you know, from Sydney, I used to go into the city. I was a little kid, so I remember seeing Crime in Style and these other Sydney crews that were pretty big at the time. And then obviously the weird culture shock for me was moving from this massively growing scene at the end of year 7 to Geelong, where it was like, it was dead. You know, there was nothing there. So it was kind of weird because I was really vibing on it and getting into it, and then got shifted down there where there was zero. So I kind of had to forge my own scene down there to a degree. Kept at it, never stopped, and sort of brought people into my world, I guess you could say, which was kind of cool. And then met guys in Melbourne prior to moving up here, and had good relationships with writers up here, and saw sort of from the, I guess you'd say, when did I move down to Victoria? It was 86, I think. So kind of through coming to Melbourne, I got to see what was happening in Melbourne and the scene flourish here. So I kind of saw that the early stages in Sydney, and then got to see that late 80s in Melbourne when it just erupted, and the shit that they were doing was, you know, world class to say the least. Like some of the best in the world came from Melbourne. So I was looking from an hour southwest, but I got to come up and see it sort of really blow up and become, you know, something altogether its own entity and something unbelievable. So it was kind of cool. But yeah, it had a massive impact on, you know, that part of the culture. It grabbed me just as much as the music did, sort of thing. And you know, I did it for many years, and I kind of put it away myself because the music became bigger and something more where I saw myself going. And our crew expanded, and I saw the guys in my crew taking care of business. You know, I didn't need to, and at the same time, as much as I wanted to, I couldn't give it the time that they were. They were the designated, you know, heads handling the graph component of our crew. And you know, they were just burning. They were burning me anyway. So I kind of just jumped into my lane a little bit more and more and more, and eventually kind of, yeah, had a bit of a hiatus from the graph altogether. I still watched on, I still went bombing, and I still joined in missions, but I just kept focusing on the graph, on the rap tip, and just kept honing that, I guess. So, yeah.
Do you have any memorable moments? You know, you talk about going on missions. Do you have any memorable missions from back in the day?
I've got a stack, yeah.
Fill us in. Like, is there any that, you know, particularly stand out?
I've literally got bundles and bundles, but as far as standing out, well, there's actually a book coming out very soon, so I don't want to detract from some of the stories in there. But you know, there's lots of cool stories, from, you know, obviously chases to injuries to you know, successful missions to yeah, all manner of stories. But I was unfortunate. I feel that another reason why I didn't go as hard as some others, I got busted twice very young, and it kind of put a little bit of a dampener on sort of, I wouldn't say put a dampener on it altogether for me, but it kind of puts you, you know, sets you back in your place when you're sort of 14 years old, and you go through the police station scenario, and you're too young to go to court. So I still vividly remember going to a building in Geelong where it was like a court prior to children's court. It was like you got a warning ultimately. And I still remember sitting down with this head inspector, big fat fucking cop, you know what I mean, and wearing heaps of stripes and shit, and I just remember him kind of talking down to me and breaking it down as if I was some kind of crazy ass criminal. And it was like, man, I did a piece, you know what I mean? And him basically saying, you know, once more, and you're in jail irrespective of being underage, and you know what happens to guys in jail, especially young boys like yourself, you know. So that's kind of a little boot up the arse. I wasn't probably arrogant enough or stupid enough to not take that a little bit like, oh fuck yeah, I better pull my head in. But I mean, it didn't prevent me from getting into enough trouble along the way after that as well. But for a period there, it sort of yeah, just made you a little more cautious on some levels.
So what was the scenario of when you got pinched at that young age? Like, were you in yards or?
No, it was a school. It was a tennis wall, side of a tennis court basically, and yeah, we got away with the mission, but just did some dumb shit and left some evidence at the scene. In Geelong, man, there was like 4 riders, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like being in Melbourne or Sydney or Adelaide even, where you know, all signs pointed towards the one couple of dudes really, and it was always going to happen. Once I got pinched, you know, I kind of eradicated all other evidence of anything else that could incriminate me, but I kind of just copped that one on the chin once it came around, and yeah, thankfully at the same time there was no task forces back then in 1987 or whatever in Geelong in particular. There was in the bigger cities, but so they weren't smart enough to start putting that with that and that with that and crews and tag names and shit like that like they do now. So it was kind of a rap on the knuckles and a bit of a yeah, a bit of a scare about what happens if you end up in the boob, you know what I mean? So
yeah, it's crazy how, like, you know, they can put you in a cell for quite a bit of time just for...
Man, I've got a massive issue with it, which is a story for another day, but, you know, I've had mates go to prison for longer than rapists, you know. How the fuck could that ever be justifiable, you know what I mean?
Painting.
Yeah, for painting trains.
The lesson. 927. Oh, yeah.